It's thinking. And it's still thinking. Almost there. And we're live.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hirth. Welcome everyone to our first council meeting for the Village of Gulf Manor, the first meeting in June. It's June 8th. And I have asked our Vice Mayor, Mr. Betcher, to be our flag carrier this evening and to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So stand as you are able. And yes, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Betcher. I will ask Mr. Lanzer for a roll call and a poll for quorum.
Mr. Betcher.
Here.
Ms. Cheney.
Here.
Mr. Knitt. Mr.
Here.
Knitt. Mr. Preedmill.
Here.
Ms. Snyder.
Here.
Mr. Van Harn.
Present.
Everyone's present?
All right, thank you. I have an abbreviated mayor's report. I know no one's going to believe me at all on that. But I do have a number of announcements that have been passed down from the county that I will be reiterating here. First off, though, I feel that it would be an eyesore on my representation of the village if I didn't in some way address the demonstrations that have been occurring across the country and across Europe with concerns about the injustices and that have been occurring, unfortunately, not just historically in our country, but through contemporary years as well. And the focus being on people of color in our country and how they have very often suffered under not just law enforcement, but in situations of power, extreme power discrepancy. And what I have to say about that is that in Gulf Manor, I'm very proud of the service that our officers have provided, that they are committed to providing equal justice under the law. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we have not had any complaints that have reached me about their service in Gulf Manor. And I have full trust in them and in our chief. But that's not going far enough in terms of what leaders are called to be acknowledging. And I recognize that. And it is my commitment to have conversations with the community and with our police department to see how we can do better and to, further make it clear how we've had a good record so far, and how we will continue to have a good record into the future, and what we would do if something like has been seen in other areas of the country were to happen here. And that's my commitment, and I wanted to make a statement about that off the top. As for the rest of my report, as I said, I have a lot of announcements. The only two concerning that weren't coming down from the county, and that was first up, I had a conversation with Sharon Cheney about the summer lunch program. We talked in depth about that topic. We haven't been talking about it much in council, given the other workload that we've had. Coming up to speed with where we are with regard to rolling out that program in conjunction with a nonprofit that we're in partnership with here in Gulf Manor. And we hope to be able to give you more updates on that as we move forward with that. But I wanted to make you aware that we're working on that, making that be a reality here for the children in Gulf Manor and the families, and that we'll keep you updated on that. The other announcement that I wanted to make was with regard to my appointment of members to committees. There's more than 2 changes that are in the works right now. I'm prepared to make an announcement on 2 of those tonight, and want to assure you that I have received plenty of statements of displeasure about it, and plenty of statements in support of it as well. But it's ultimately my call. I have decided this has all been brought about by our long-term member Lou Marks stepping down from council, and in his absence, he left a void in more ways than one, but one of those was with regard to who was going to chair executive committee. And I've made the decision to pull Sharon Cheney over from being on the finance committee to also, in addition to that, she's not leaving her position on the finance committee, but also coming over to executive committee. And made the decision to have our newest member, Ashley Snyder, be the chair of executive committee. I've done that with, in, like I said, consultation with a number of folks, as well as hearing a lot of displeasure about that through the grapevine. I've been assured by Ms. Cheney that she will provide excellent mentorship, given that Ashley is the newest member of our council, and I'm fully confident in Ashley's capabilities in chairing that committee. And I want to thank Ashley for taking on what is ultimately a difficult position in leadership. One of the things that I shared with her is that when you're in leadership, and I'm sure every council member knows this, that when you're in leadership, you're going to be criticized for your decisions. And some of those times, rightfully so, because you've made some bad decisions and you got to own up to it. And other times, not rightfully so, and you got to stand up for yourself. And that in both of those cases, that I have her back on that. And that even when you accept in a leadership position that you have to at times apologize and make up for bad decisions that you've made, and at other times have to stand up for yourself, that even in those, even given the knowledge of having to do those 2 things, you're still not going to be able to please everyone. You got to be able to live with that too. And I'm fully confident that she's able to do that. So thank you very much, Ashley, for your service to the village and to the executive committee.
Thank you for having trusted me.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
I guess.
The others, I'm going to have to read off my phone, and I apologize that I did not print these out prior. These are the other announcements. I did not print these out prior to my leaving the proximity of my printer this week. And one of those is that this is an update from the leadership meeting that I have with the county every week on Tuesdays. The one last week was very abbreviated. There was not much conversation about the mass demonstrations occurring across the country, Europe, and here in Hamilton County. So that was a bit of a surprise that there wasn't very much talk about that, but there was a comment that was made by Ms. Treehouse, which is First Amendment speech is an exception to the limitation on mass gatherings, and that there's a strong recommendation for the use of masks and gloves in all those situations. Another important announcement at that meeting was this was from Jeff Aludo, who's the county manager. He was reiterating a message that's been passed along to local governments about the flexibility on those local government funds in terms of how we're using them for revenue replacement. He wanted to encourage local communities to understand that there is a lot of flexibility around that they found language for that, that their attorneys are very confident in, and that if they have any questions about that, to make sure that that we're in conversation with them. And if doesn't need to be spoken to tonight, but if anyone would like to during Mr. Lanzer or Mr. Donellan during your report, if you'd like to go into more detail on that, you're welcome to. If not, I understand you may not be prepared to. Just give more background on what that kind of controversy is about. The remaining reports that I have largely are due to COVID reopenings. And like I said, I've got a number of announcements about that. We have the most recent numbers are 591 hospitalized and 172 deaths in Hamilton County that have been attributed to COVID-19. I'm gonna have to wear my glasses for the rest of these updates here, which is, one moment. All right. Hamilton County has announced a rental and utilities assistance program that will employ the assistance of community partner organizations to render rental and utility assistance to Hamilton County residents that cannot pay rent due to a decrease in income from COVID-19. 3.5 million has been put aside towards this initial effort, with an initial 1.5 being set aside for additional resource needs identified related to eviction prevention. More details will be announced for organizations that conduct this type of work in the community to apply to distribute the allocated funds and manage the program. So basically, they're going to be looking for organizations to be dispensing that money for assistance. Likely that will be some of the major nonprofits in the region. It is likely that more than one organization will be selected, and details will be announced further. Hamilton County Community Fair, originally scheduled for July 8th through 11th, has been canceled. State Fair is still on for all you 4-Hers and other folks that are interested in State Fair. There's been a lot of recommendations that have come down, just like all the other reopenings, about how to do that in a safe way, but the State Fair is still on. Governor DeWine announced that the state fully intends to have school in the fall, and that the date of return will be in the power of local school boards. In advance of school openings, their administration will provide guidance for best practices for that. The Lieutenant Governor announced 3 new grant programs available to Ohio businesses. I'm going to leave it at that. If you're a business and you're interested in those programs, you can contact our office or search for that. As I said, if you do have difficulty finding more information about that from the county website, don't hesitate to contact us. This way. May be aware that June 10th, entertainment venues, that's aquariums, art galleries, country clubs, ice rinks, indoor family entertainment centers, laser tag facilities, movie theaters, museums, and outdoor playgrounds, as well as public recreation centers, roller skating rinks, social clubs, trampoline parks, and zoos will all be allowed to reopen under the guidelines that are coming down through the state. And June 19th, that will then also include casinos and amusement parks and water parks. And oops. Let's see here. Hamilton County, this is the last one from the county. Hamilton County Clerk of Courts, that's Aftab Pervel, has announced the creation of an eviction help center, which will be located across from Hamilton County Municipal Courtroom that holds eviction hearings at the County Justice Center. Both landlords and tenants can visit the help center for legal resources and information about emergency assistance. Eviction court in Hamilton County resumes, is that today? Resumed today, if you weren't aware of that. That was following, was it the county or the city being, I believe it was the county being sued by rental owners for not being able to make a living. And I believe that is it from the county. And I appreciate your patience for how dry that report can sometimes be, but it's important information that we've been asked to pass along. And with that, that's the end of my report, and I will ask for the administrator's report from Mr. Hirth. Oh, wait, one more thing before we turn it over to Mr. Hirth. For folks that may be joining us either by phone or joining us later on in the meeting, we have no registered guests to speak tonight. Typically, the way that works is you are allotted 3 minutes to make your statement. The way we've been doing that on the Zoom kind of meetings is there's a chat box where you can basically reach out to Mr. Lanzer and say that you would like to speak, and then he will make me aware of that later on. And I would ask Mr. Lanzer if anybody joins in late to please give them a notice of that so they're clear on that, as well as the fact that we're planning on having an executive session tonight, which will exclude the public for a period of time. And that may likely, they may not want to wait so they may want to just kind of check out when we go into that. So I'll ask Mr. Lanzer to make any latecomers aware of that information. And then with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Hirth for the administrator's report.
Good evening, everybody. So Mayor Dinsmore had mentioned the local government funds that are available to the COVID response. We're on top of that. Mr. Donilon was looking for any particular legislation today that council might need to pass later in the month. And we have registered on the website where we will be able to access requesting funds. We actually did that when they first notified communities that that type of funding would be available during the COVID pandemic. Some good news with the opening of playgrounds on Wednesday of this week, June 10th, our playground equipment and volunteer park will be open for use on that same day. The maintenance crew is going to be sanitizing that equipment 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We believe that will be adequate for the amount of use that we've observed in the park. We will continue to monitor that as necessary to make sure that we're adequately doing what we need to do in that area. At this time, though, we will not be opening the restrooms. That's something that we're still considering how we continue to sanitize those or how we need to do that. Social distancing protocols will still continue in the municipal building. Mayor's Court actually resumed this past Monday, June 1st. Our isolation protocols worked well. If you haven't been down here or seen, we did erect a tent in the south parking lot next to the village hall where people entering court are able to be processed or can congregate until they allow the maximum number of people who can come into the hall to have their hearing before the judge. We will continue with that process at the next court date, which will be June 15th. And again, we'll continue to monitor it and see if we need to change any protocols. I would like to personally thank Ms. Cheney, Ms. Snyder, the mayor, Mr. Lanzer, Mr. Van Harn, friends and family of those people who came down on Friday to help us with Impact Day. Impact Day is a day where Deloitte usually comes and helps us do flower planting, trimming beds, and mulching. We did not have their assistance this year, sadly, because of the COVID pandemic, but our crew did a great job getting a lot more done than I thought we would ever do. So thank you all, particularly those of you who recruited volunteers to come help us. There were some people that I didn't mention, but I'm sure that everybody has reached out to those folks and thanked them. We still have a large number of Census 2020 signs to distribute. Again, they're not doing any good sitting outside in the hallway next to my office. We really need help if you can find some additional people. Mr. Pridnoff this past week placed another 8 or 9, I believe it was. Representation of the signs looked great on Lasanaville. It would be great if we could get more in the inner ring of the community. It appears, and this again is good news, this is good news administrator report. It appears that we are going to be funded for the Vera Road project for next year. It seems that there was a list that was published by the state legislator on projects that they're moving forward with. There were some projects that were taken off the list. Ours was not one of those. So that's a great piece of news for us to get that side of the village taken care of next summer. On another note, and we'll see if I can make this work here. Bear with me. Nope, wrong one, sorry. There it is. Sorry about that. I received a call this, actually the end of last week from Mr. Joe Adams from 6314 Stover. He called to compliment the village on the professional manner in which we're conducting the reconstruction of Stover Avenue. Mr. Adams had apparently had previous opportunities to be involved where communities are doing this type of work. And what he was most impressed about was the attentive and helpful attitude of the construction company. I'm going to forward this on to our contractor, JMA, and also to Welsh Excavation to let them know that not only are we getting a few complaints, but also some people are recognizing that we're doing some good work. Again, that project will be done by the end of July. And hopefully we'll be able to deliver that earlier than that. An update on the 2021 tax budget. We are scheduling the public hearing for that budget for Monday, July 13th, 2020 at 6:45 p.m. prior to the council meeting. So I don't know if we'll be meeting in person that day or if we'll still be doing the virtual calls, but if you can add that to your calendar, I'll go ahead and send out everyone a reminder this week. An important thing is that we have gotten input from the department heads in terms of what kinds of projects need to be funded next year or needs that we have. If council members have any suggestions on projects, those should be filtered directly to the mayor, and the mayor will bring those to me and Mr. Lanzer, and we'll consider those in the budget. So is that understood? Any budget requests from council members need to go directly to the mayor. And that'll be a part of the mayor's strategy for next year. Just to give you a heads up, we've completed healthcare enrollment, open enrollment for the employees. It ended today. We have, as usual, we have partnered with Haran. Haran did an excellent job this year in helping us maintain our budget. Healthcare costs increase were projected to be at 17% overall for the community this year. We budgeted for 10, knowing that was as high as we wanted to go, and we actually were able to come in at just under 5%, which is a huge, huge accomplishment. In doing that, we believe that we're offering the best healthcare that's available to our employees. We're competitive with other communities and other businesses, and we're providing plans available at the lowest cost with the best benefits that we can achieve. In that vein, some of the things that we improved, if you recall, in previous years, we were trying to drive the employee population to a high deductible healthcare plan with a healthcare savings account. Our thought was by this point in time, we would be totally there where everybody's on that plan. We did a survey of our employees to get feedback on what the things were that they liked about our healthcare plan, whether or not they would like to put more money out in front of their healthcare as opposed to paying higher copays and higher deductibles on things. In that vein, we were able to do that. And the way that we're doing that is we're basing our cost of healthcare through the high deductible healthcare plan. However, employees can buy up to a more expensive PPO plan, which has more outlay at the beginning of the plan, higher or lower copays at the end of the plan. The HSA will still be offered to those who are in the high deductible healthcare plan. We are staying with Medical Mutual of Ohio through the MIWA account. We found that Medical Mutual offered great service to us, which was a lot better than we'd had with United Healthcare and other vendors that we had used previously. What we saw in the healthcare plan, even in both plans, deductibles did go up moderately, along with copays and prescription costs. So costs were held down, I think a lot better than we've seen exampled in other industries. We are still continuing to offer dental through Dental Care Plus. Vision through iMed, which is a huge upgrade for us, and we're getting it at a lesser cost. Long-term disability is still being offered. Life insurance, Aflac is still available as an optional coverage for our employees. And overall, we, through our voluntary insurance plan, those rates are even more competitive than what Aflac offers. So a lot of good things happening. One of the things that we did that I'm going to show you here, and need to remember how to do this. We actually put healthcare enrollment online. So that's a first for us. So this is what the employees see after a login. We have a recording of the mandatory meetings that were provided for the employees. We have the open enrollment booklet that describes all of our healthcare plans, the rates, and then additional ancillary products or booklets that show more detail. Aflac documents are available, and then we have all the contact information from the various companies who are providing service to us. So that is a huge accomplishment. This is the first year that we're not running with our tails on fire trying to get this done at the last minute. So we're calm, it's done, everybody's enrolled. Now it's a matter of just getting the paperwork done. Let me see here. I think that's it. That's the end of my report. And the mayor is muted.
Good stuff, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hirth, for your report, and thank you for all you do for the village. I know a lot of times that that kind of work, doing that tedious administrative work that benefits our employees, sometimes goes without thanks, and want to make sure that this isn't one of those times. Thank you for your service to our employees and helping them be able to have those benefits.
I appreciate that. Mr. Lanzer and Ms. Gideon were both key components of that committee. So
all right. Thank you both.
And I can't say enough how it's important for us to partner with vendors like Horan, because they do a lot of the legwork and they do the implementation of these things, where in the past we tried to do that on our own. And with all the fires that we have in the fire pit, we just can't do it well. So they didn't. We had some issues last year just because it was a new year with them, but this year it worked beautifully.
Fantastic. Mr. Lanzer, thank you for your service, and may we have your fiscal report?
Sure. Two things. As Mr. Hirth mentioned, work on the tax budget is ongoing. I've been working across departments to get an idea of what each of their budget needs are, especially to learn about and prioritize capital expenses for each of them. At the moment, I'm still waiting on revenue forecasts from the county and the state. Once that information is in my hands, the tax budget can be finalized and presented to each of you for review. The other part is I've also completed the May financial packet as of 3:30 this afternoon. Fifth Third had some technical difficulties last week, so we were unable to get our account statements, which was one of the reasons for the delay. I wanted to get it done before I go on leave Wednesday, because I'll be unable to attend the next council meeting. So knowing that, anyhow, with that said, I'm still working on developing the new format for the packet. So this month's our May's financial packet is still utilizing the old format. However, for the month of May, the village had an adjusted balance of $2,385,000. Of this, $2,218,000 is in the village's primary account, with the remaining balance resting between the village's police department's two police department accounts, as well as the mayor's court account. As I mentioned somewhat often, in regard to the amount found in the primary account, the vast majority of this, approximately $1.5 million, rests in the village's dedicated street funds and can only be spent for these dedicated purposes. So $1.5 million of that 2.2 can only be spent on road and street projects for the village. As for payments, the village had 77 payments in May, totaling $210,000. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the village received 29 payments, totaling $190,000 in May. It's important to look at the general fund because that's our village's primary spending source. So in May, the village received $95,874 in income tax receipts. Income tax is what we've been talking about consistently since COVID began. So this amount was a 20% reduction from what the village received during May 2019. So that $95,000 was a 20% reduction over the same period from last year. Now, although this is significant, this reduction was not unplanned. In fact, it was forecasted by Rita. If you recall in the last meeting, I discussed that Rita forecasted a 20% reduction in income tax receipts for the month of April, May, and June of this year, followed by a 10% reduction for the months over the next quarter, followed by a 5% reductions for the months in the fourth quarter of this year. So the reduction we've seen in May was in line with Rita forecasts as well as updated village budgets. We accounted for the reduction. The good news is that the village remains $21,000 to the positive in the general fund comparing year to year. So to date, the village has generated $975,000 in general fund revenue through May 2019. Again, this is $21,000 more than what the village had on hand in the general fund in May 2019. Also positive news is that village appropriations remain below that from 2019 in the amount of approximately $40,000. So through May 2020, when compared to through May 2019, the village has spent $40,000 less this year than last year. That's a good strategy to have in times of uncertainty in the revenues. Again, there are continued opportunities for appropriations, savings in appropriations. One area Ron mentioned is in healthcare. We budgeted a 10% increase in healthcare costs, employee healthcare costs for the 2020 budget, and those healthcare costs came in at 5%. So we will have savings in employee healthcare for this year. And finally, I will be enjoying some time away from the village beginning on Wednesday. I'm still able to be reached by phone or email. If you have an emergency, feel free to give me a call or feel free to contact Mr. Hirth. End of report.
Oh, and we're congratulating you early for the new addition to your family coming on Wednesday.
Thank you. Thank you. I told Ron today, fortunately, I lost all my hair already, so this one should be smooth sailing.
You'll actually look like your wife.
One question for, I guess, the mayor and Andy. When do you need any last requests before the tax budget from any of the committees? Is there a deadline date or whatever you need it by?
Yeah, I would request that the requests come in by the end of June. The reason being is I want to have the budget finalized and ready to go and have it in each one of your hands prior to that July meeting, just so we have an understanding of where the budget's going to be for next year.
So Andy, can we put a specific date on that for Friday, June 26th? That gives everybody 3 weeks. That should be.
I was going to further request that it be pushed a week earlier than that, so that I have opportunity to have conversations with whoever has a request.
To the 19th?
If multiple requests are coming in, that we have a week to be able to talk before I go to Mr. Lanzer.
Perfect.
All right.
So what would that date be then? The 19th?
The 19th.
Correct.
Okay.
June
All right.
19th.
All right. Have a
I
good
will-
week. Have a wonderful week, Andy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll be back June 24th.
4th, yeah.
2 weeks there.
Counting every day.
Yeah.
And Mr. Lanzer, I had a final comment just to address. I understand that the format isn't prepared yet. Wanted to make sure that in the formulation of that and in the rollout of that you include our request. I believe it was from Mr. Van Harn, and if I got that wrong, if it was Mr. Knepp or if it was somebody else, about the request for having a glossary of financial terms in that, to make sure that that's part of that format as well. Do you recall?
Yeah. No,
Yeah. Okay.
I've been working on it. I have most of them ready to go already. So we're good in that department.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Andy, I sent you a message today of a few more small tweaks. They're not big.
Right.
But I said, if you can't do it before Wednesday, that's fine. But I do have a few more little things that we could talk over, I think. Anyway, okay. I sent you a message today. So
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your report, Mr. Lanzer. And now is the time that we have our second poll for quorum.
Mr. Betcher,
Here.
Miss Cheney. Miss Cheney.
Here.
Mr. Cadet.
Present.
Mr. Priedenoff.
Present.
Miss Snyder.
Here.
Mr. Van Harn.
present.
All members are present.
Thank you. I will now turn it over to our solicitor, Mr. Donnellan, for the solicitor's report.
Thank you. First of all, I presented in the legislative packet Resolution 2020-6, which is the resolution to authorize continuation of our health insurance contract effective July 1. Mr. Hurth, did you want to have that passed this evening or just reviewed and discussed? You're muted.
You're muted.
Thanks for doing that. If council sees fit to pass this evening, it would be helpful because that will allow us to complete the contracts that need to be done. That's up to you guys. It's a flat amount. I don't have the legislation in front of me. It was 182, I believe, but our healthcare expenses for the village will not exceed that.
It was authorized up to a total of $182,000, and I believe the larger of the two quotes was just below that number. Last year was just under 180, so it's a very nominal increase. Is council's want to proceed this evening with it? If so, I need a motion to read this by title only.
So moved.
Second. Can't hear you, Mayor. Mayor, you're muted.
Sorry, folks. I heard the first and a second. Do we have a roll call on that?
No, just all in favor, aye on that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Without
right.
objection, I'll take that as unanimous. Thank you.
This is resolution number 2020-6, a resolution approving healthcare insurance contract, and that would be effective July 1 of 2020 through June 30, 2021 with Medical Mutual COSE, C-O-S-E. So we need a motion, a second, discussion, and a roll call vote.
Do I have a first? Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cheney. Is there any discussion?
So in my report, I pretty much went through the features of the healthcare plan. Unless there are any questions about that.
just for the sake, what does it look like for employees? And you may have already said this, but just to reiterate, any increases in deductibles, any increases in what the employees are paying in?
So if you're on the healthcare, the high deductible healthcare plan with the HSA, and we are still doing the HSA where if employees contribute to their HSA, we match $250 maximum quarterly. So that would be an additional potential $1,000 investment in the employee to their healthcare if they're on the HDHP. If they choose to buy up to the PPO, their healthcare is going to be more expensive, but that's their choice. Again, you're putting more money out up front, less money out when you hit your deductibles and your co-pays on your prescriptions and on your doctor's visits and stuff like that. So it's basically allowing the employees to choose whatever they want to do. The PPO is more expensive. There are increases up to possibly $50 a paycheck, depending on what you're actually choosing on the plan. But again, that's at the employee's choice to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Hirth. Have you heard any feedback from employees about the plan?
Our biggest, the person who gives us the most feedback about the plan was very pleased with what we have done this year.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Hirth?
I said that well to Andy, right?
All right. Want to just encourage anyone watching this video, if you have complaints or enthusiastic support of anything that council does, please let me know. And with that, roll call vote.
Mr. Betcher,
Yes.
Ms. Cheney,
Yes.
Mr. Knipp, Mr. Knipp,
Yes.
Mr. Priedenoff,
Yes.
Ms. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Van Harn.
Yes.
All members voted in favor.
Thank you.
Just a second note, Mr. Hirth touched on it a little bit. The Ohio General Assembly on Friday passed Senate Bill 310 with some amendments. Senate Bill 310 is a mechanism to fund local communities for the COVID relief funds coming from the federal government. It's going back to the Senate, hopefully this week, to reconcile the differences, then be passed and accepted by the governor. In the bill, they set up a process for communities to make application. I think Mr. Hirth mentioned he and Mr. Lanzer have already registered through the portal with the Office of Management and Budget, which is the first step in the process. We may be asked also to pass a resolution at our next meeting committing to specific uses of the funds. Nothing drastic. Very typically, it's what impact the community has felt from COVID, such as overtime, additional supplies, and so forth. So we'll be getting that information here over the next week or two, probably getting it to the agenda for the meeting on the 22nd, so that we've dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's to start receiving some of those funds. If you recall, last meeting, you approved the alternative formula for local government fund. My understanding is that is the formula mechanism they're going to use to determine eligibility for funds. And then the second tier is asking for that reimbursement based upon your budget and what expenditures you've had to date. So we'll keep monitoring that to make sure we don't fall through the cracks and hopefully get some budget relief, even though from Mr. Lanzer's report, it sounds like we're doing well treading water during this COVID crisis. Last point is, we discussed this at the last meeting, and that is with Mr. Mark's resignation from council and his resignation from the fire board. By our membership agreement, council appoints a new member of council to that board. There's a meeting, Mr. Hirth, is it next Wednesday?
It's on Wednesday, the 17th of June.
So if there's some interest and council is inclined, it'd be a good idea to have a motion to appoint someone to the board so they could attend that meeting as well next week. And Mayor, I don't know if you have any input as to who might be a suitable replacement for Mr. Marks.
Right. Well, first off, yeah, I agree that we should go ahead and make this appointment. That council should go ahead and make this appointment. It had previously been suggested that we make this appointment at our previous meeting, but because we were having the executive session, I felt that whoever got appointed to this should be well aware of what they were getting into. Didn't want to make the appointment prior to that executive session. I have talked with Mr. Betcher, and he has stated his willingness to be in that position, and I have trust and confidence in him. It is not my appointment to make. If it was, I would appoint Mr. Betcher. But that being said, it's open to discussion and a motion.
I did express my interest to Ron. I did not express it to you, but I do feel like since I am skilled and have worked with many large, complicated business deals in the past, that I would be, I think, a good candidate to consider for it. And I did have two talks with Ron actually to get a better picture of it. But I think I would go in first as a listener to try to understand and not necessarily bring anything except listen, but bring some experience, I think, to pretty complicated deals. I mean, it's something I feel like I've done in the past. Maybe not in municipality world, but certainly with some pretty large business dealings. So I'd like to throw my name in the hat if you consider that.
Any other discussion?
Do you even want your name in the hat?
What's that?
I said, does Matt even want his name in the hat?
That's a good question.
You're muted right now. You're muted, Matt.
You're muted, Matt.
Muted.
You're muted.
As Mr. Mayor said, I am willing to throw my hat in the ring for contention, yes. I will add it to the list of things and the litany of things that I'm already involved with. But I think the connection between the finance on the village side will help me help the fire district make some better choices in the future.
All right. I have not heard a motion yet. I'm not allowed to make the motion.
I will say that a few of us have been on council following this whole thing from the very, very beginning. And Matt has been one of them that has been with it since we went through all the process. So I would make a motion for Matt because he has a lot of experience in it.
Is there another motion or a second?
I will second Matt.
Is there any other?
I'll make a motion for Roger. You know, I think his experience is also pretty important. He understands the needs to be peacemaker and how to mend the bridges, as well as to handle the financial side of it from his corporate background, based on what I know. So
I'll second that.
All right.
Yeah, one thing I've heard from my discussions is that everybody is circling a lot around the financial decisions, but nobody is really bringing up, this is about caring for people. This is about building a thing that takes care of people in times of trouble. And also, why did a lot of these people get into this? Why did they become firefighters? Why do those things? It sounds funny now, but I think it's been lost in some of that. And with the village's grand history in Volunteer Park, and the fact that we're a volunteer fire department was one of the cornerstones of our village, I think some of that has to be at least carried into the discussion if it's available. Finances are finances. They're going to be what they are always. But I think it bring a little bit of heart, a little bit of character, and some open-ended questions to it definitely has value in it. So
Any more discussion?
Who really has the time? Who has the time to commit to the process? That's kind of a tough one for everybody, I think.
I want to make sure that we don't go too far afield with a discussion about our role with the district, and that we're focusing upon filling a vacancy right now, because our role with the district is something that should not be openly discussed right now.
Is that said, is there any more discussion? Are we ready for me to call a vote? I'm going to take that as ready to call a vote. All those in favor of Mr. Van Harn?
You might want to do a roll call vote.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize. We'll do a roll call vote.
As a point of order, do we start with the first motion? The first motion was for Mr. Betcher.
Okay, I'll ask Terry, is that proper procedure? It sounds like it to me.
It makes sense. At the same time, when you're electing a position, oftentimes you just ask people to vote for the specific person for the position and see what the outcome may be.
Let's do that. Roll call vote, say who you're voting for. All right.
Okay. Mr. Betcher.
Mr. Van Hart,
Oh,
Ms. Cheney.
Matt.
Mr. Knipp.
Mr. Van Hart.
Mr. Priedenoff.
Mr. Van Harn.
Ms. Snyder.
Mr. Betcher.
Mr. Van Harn.
Vote for Matt, I dare you.
That's actually where my heart says I should do, to be honest.
He's got the time, whoever wants it.
So
Thanks,
if
bud.
I vote for myself, then it falls on the mayor? Is that correct?
No, if you vote for
If you
yourself.
vote for yourself, you got it. Yeah.
Oh,
If you vote for Mr. Betcher, it goes to me.
That's what he's asking, yeah.
well, then I have to vote for myself. No offense, Matt. I believe I can do it. I know you got a lot of hands in a lot of pockets, so.
Congratulations, Mr. Van Harn.
Congratulations.
Roger has more time to dig.
And that is all I have for my report.
Thank you, Mr. Donnellan. I'm going to ask for a few more reports before asking for a motion to go into executive session. And I will ask the solicitor for the exact wording of that because it got changed up on me. First off, do we have a Little Miami Fire District report?
Actually, we do not this evening.
Very good. Do we have a police report this evening?
I do have a mayor's court report.
Proceed, thank you.
First, I just want to start with saying that I, with the entire police department, condemn the horrific acts of the officers in the Minneapolis Police Department that resulted in the death of George Floyd. The actions and inactions are a betrayal to all of us, and I send my sympathies out to the friends and family of Mr. Floyd. With that said, I'll do the mayor's court report. For the month of May, total to the village was $953. Total to the state was $74. The other line that's in all these reports is $33 for a total of $1,060. That is the end of the mayor's court report.
Thank you, Chief Campbell. Do we have an education report?
We need a motion to accept the report
Oh.
first.
I apologize.
So motion.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Without objection, I take that as unanimous. Thank you, Chief Campbell. And is there an education report?
No, thanks.
All right. Any other reports? Anyone that wishes to speak? And that's a question to you, Mr. Lanzer, tracking any of the new, if there's anyone that has joined us.
No, there's no one new in the room. It's just us.
Yeah. All right, very good. With that, I will ask for Mr. Donnellan, our attorney, our solicitor, to help counsel with the wording of a motion for an executive session. And then I'll ask for a motion.
The Sunshine statute, which is 121.22 at subsection E6, recognizes that we may go into an executive session to review details relative to security arrangements and emergency response protocols if public exposure would undermine or reasonably jeopardize public safety and security. I believe there's some issues in this very interesting climate in which we are operating that the chief would like to talk to us in executive session. So based upon RC 121.22 E6, we would ask for that motion to adjourn to executive session.
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second. We'll need a roll call vote.
Well, bear with me. Mr. Batcher,
Yes.
Ms. Cheney,
Yes?
Mr. Knipp,
Yes.
Mr. Priedenoff,
Yes.
Ms. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Van Harn.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, I'm going to take us into a breakout room, so everybody hang on.
I'm going to take a 2-minute break before we break out.
Anyone else that's watching, we're going to go dark for a while and won't be back until we're done.
Well, it's just us.
We can see the tech savvy people in the group.
I'm learning it as everyone else in the world is. I'm still like 35% on Zoom.
Do it every Monday. Andy, you got a name picked out yet? You're muted.
We do not, which is kind of scary.
I'm available for creative services. Moon Unit.
I like Moon Unit. My parents were big Frank Zappa fans, so that works.
Weasels rip my flesh.
Yeah, Dweezil.
Every child of mine has a saint name and a nature name as well.
I like it. I like it.
My oldest wanted me to name my youngest, who is Megan, wanted to name her Megan and Eggs.
Yeah, Frank had Dweezil and Moon Unit, so.
Moon Unit. I like it. I like all of them.
It is so good.
Motion to adjourn?
For a second. All right, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
It is so
With that
Thank you.
objection, I take that as unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good week.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.